Blog Talk Radio.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to BeatStreet Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host, Lee, a.k.a. the Hoops Guru. As always, got my partner with me, Mr. Know-It-All, or MKA. You can call him Ed. We got a really good show for you. There's a lot of good things to touch on. A little bit of baseball, NFL game tonight, and like to get into some NBA talk as well. A lot of surprise teams in the NBA that are making moves, and just like to get the whole banter going on. MKA is MIA at this particular moment, but hopefully, he'll jump in here and we'll get it together as the show progresses. But before I even get into the NFL, the whole thing, and talk about basketball, I just want to go into this A-Rod situation that's going on. As you know, he had met with the arbitrator, stormed out the room, and if you've been listening to a lot of sports talk or listened to a lot of ESPN, things of that nature, they're, talking about how this is dominating the airways, dominating the sports, and actually just dominating the headlines. And the only reason it's dominating the headlines is because they're allowing it to. And to me, it's not that big of a deal. As a matter of fact, the sensationalism can be controlled by baseball itself. If only, particularly, just show me a failed test. If he failed a drug test by the substances that were tested by baseball, suspend him. If he doesn't have a failed test, don't suspend him. It's that simple. Investigating him and going to Balco and finding out he did this and did that, to interviewing people, to me is absurd. And it's like baseball is actually becoming its own worst enemy and giving itself its own bad publicity. We've been dealing with this steroid junk since, 1998, 95, 97, somewhere in that time, and it still hasn't gone away because baseball is still perpetuating it. And that's why, as well as why a lot of young athletes may not be playing baseball, because it just has a strange culture. We don't like A-Rod, because we thought he took steroids and he may have snitched on people, so I'm going to throw a pitch at him. Or, hey, this guy hit a home run and he's staring too long at the home run. We're going to pit somebody else on the team because of that. Oh, he hit a home run and he's taking too long to run across the bases. We're going to plunk somebody on his team for that. Or, this guy threw over my head too high. I'm going to rush the mound. Oh, this guy ran across the pitcher's mound after he got 3 outs. That's disrespectful. We're going to plunk somebody in your team for that next time they're at bat. It's just a culture that they have in baseball. I think that a lot of athletes growing up don't want to deal with it, and that's why I think the sport is having a gradual decline. Yeah, a very popular sport in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, but as the popularity of basketball and football has increased, these more attractive sports, more dynamic sports, more active sports than baseball, you've seen guys spending less time with it, especially since now sports have become more and more seasonal, more and more than seasonal year-round sports. To excel, guys are playing basketball in the fall, winter, and the summer. Football as well. You have your spring training camps, you have your summer mini camps, and by the time the fall, football's starting back up again. So I think that's another thing that's hurting baseball as well. So the A-Rod controversy to me is something that could be really just nipped in the bud, handled easily by baseball. But if they want to create their own problem, let them have it. I'm going to focus on the things that are positive happening in the sports. So that's what we're going to do. And getting into the things that's going on in sports right now, there is a game in the NFL tonight, and you have the Atlanta Falcons playing the New Orleans Saints. This game right here, everybody's predicting the New Orleans Saints to win handedly. I think they should be able to do it as well. The only thing that may interfere is that these teams are considered rivals, even if not nationally, they are kind of locally. And because of the Atlanta Falcons' record at this particular time, this may be their Super Bowl this year. Because pretty much if they lose it, they're mathematically excluded from the playoffs. Realistically, they're excluded from the playoffs anyway. But this is the opportunity for them to actually get in there and do at least salvage their season somewhat, because it's been very disappointing for a team that had Super Bowl aspirations. They're not even going to sniff the playoffs. They're not going to sniff the wild card or anything. Matter of fact, they should be focused on if they can get Jadeveon Clowney or not. That's how bad Atlanta is at this particular point. So if they haven't, this is a pride game for them. So in that regard, they may have a chance, and they're at home, but I doubt it seriously. New Orleans sees that Carolina's playing effective ball. They have 2 more games with Carolina down the line, and they want to protect their division lead. So I expect them to go ahead and use that dominant defense against Carolina and win this game handily tonight. Hopefully, if Ed comes in, he'll be able to put his insight on this as well. But we will see. Now, also, what I like to do, since I'm solo riding here today, I'd like to get into a little NBA ball. And if anybody'd like to join the conversation, you can feel free to add to the conversation. You can call us at 347-945-6921. Again, that's 347-945-6921. And I guess the big game that in the NBA last night was the Knicks versus the Indiana Pacers. Very good game, entertaining game. I think that's the most focused game we saw from the Knicks this year. And to no surprise, anytime, one of the top tier teams come in, any team gives them a focused and concentrated effort. It's just the same if Miami comes rolling into town or San Antonio comes rolling into town. You could be a team like the Bobcats, Utah, wherever the case may be. All of a sudden, you're going to see a more concentrated playoff energy. More than likely, just for the simple fact that your stadium, if you're at home, is full than other times than when other teams come into town. But nevertheless, the Knicks did play well. Carmelo had good numbers, didn't shoot that well, but pulled down 18 rebounds. That's highly impressive. Unfortunately, the Knicks didn't pull it out. Terrible play by Iman Shumpert. You just can't foul in that situation. I mean, if the man makes the 3, clap your hands and see if you can do something with the rest of the clock. You're up 3 points. A 3-pointer only ties the game. But you fouling him is the potential for a 4-point play, but he didn't make it, so you put him on the free throw line. Okay, Paul George is on the free throw line. He gets 3 uncontested shots. Now, as a defender, you have to think. The Paul George may shoot between 30 and 35% from the 3-point line. Without even looking at his stats, I bet you he's a 75% or more free throw shooter. So which odds as a defender do you take? I'm going to take the odds on the 3-pointer. I'm going to play you tight, keep my hands straight. I'm not going to reach or anything. You jump over me, make the shot, I clap my hands, I take the final shot recorder, we go to overtime. Or yet, I defend you, it clinks off the rim, you rebound, you win the game. So that's the problem with the Knicks and bad teams, is that when they have opportunities to win, they do unintelligent things that allow a good team like Indiana to take advantage of those situations and improve their records. And Iman Shumpert's not in the situation right now to make mistakes because he's already on the trading block with the Knicks. And this isn't going to help. You saw the look on his face. And when the Knicks are getting crucified in the local media and on national media with their horrible records, the Knicks and Brooklyn Nets, that's the last thing this guy needed, that particular spotlight on himself. So, in that regard, they still got work to do. But unfortunately for the Knicks, they are in a division that is pretty horrible. When we're talking about horrible, we're talking about some putrid records. Excuse me, folks. The record we see right now for the Toronto is 5-7. Philadelphia 5-8. Brooklyn 4-9, and the Knicks are 3-8, and the Nets are 3-8. But 3-8 only has you one game behind Toronto that's leading the division. And, with 79 games left, there's plenty of time to get the ship right. Someone from the division is going to make the playoffs. So as bad as they're playing, Well, the Knicks, I don't know. Unless they make a trade, maybe Shumpert trying to get a point guard or something, they're in trouble. Brooklyn, I still think, has an opportunity to improve their record. But it really, really, really depends on the health of Darren Williams. Darren Williams is the $98 million man. He's the first guy they brought to change this organization around. Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce are in the twilight of their careers. They're just supposed to be the solid veterans that are going to get guys like Brook Lopez, Joe Johnson, and Darren Williams over the hump. But this guy's got to get healthy, and he has to show some resemblance of that dominant point guard who was an all-star and a threat in Utah. Without him, it doesn't matter. This record is going to be a reflection of his ineptitude. So he has to turn it around. He's the driving force with the success and the failure of the Brooklyn Nets. So we will see. Now, as opposed to the other team, going back to the Knicks-Pacers game, hats off to Paul George. This guy is really rounding into shape as a professional in his fourth year. I think his playoff experience with the Miami Heat really was an eye-opener for him, extremely, because it seemed like he realized that he does belong on the stage with the Carmelo Anthonys, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Derrick Rose, and Kevin Durant. And he's playing like it. To defend Carmelo Anthony for 48 minutes and still be able to drop 35 points shows a tremendous amount of effort and tremendous amount of focus. And I think, he's showing his hunger that he wants to win, and it's in a reflection of their record. So, Paul George is becoming one of those dudes. I was telling one of my buddies today, if I compare him to anything, I would say Paul George is what we would have got if Tracy McGrady was ever hungry and healthy. I think that's what you see in Paul George now, the aggressiveness, the good shooting, athletic ability, but he has the right mind frame. And as a young player, I believe he's only 24 years old, he's going to go a very, very long way. He's going to have a very good career. 10-1 right now. They're the dominant team in the Eastern Conference. And I'm sure that's a goal for them because they have to have home field advantage in the playoffs. Advantage in the playoffs, because that's what it's all about with them playing against Miami. And it still doesn't guarantee anything with Miami because Miami is a solid road team. And speaking of Miami, quiet is kept. They're on a 5-game winning streak, and the starters haven't had to play in the fourth quarter of the last 2 games. So, I guess because of the lofty expectations of being a 2-time defending champions, they're not getting a lot of press or play right now, but these guys are really seem like they've fixed a little road bumps and malaise they had earlier in the season, and they're striving right now. Their record is very, very impressive at 3-9. They won, like I said, they won 5 in a row, and I really see them, being probably not really caring if they get the top seed, but just making sure that they're a cohesive and healthy unit when the playoffs are around, even though that is a far time off. But a surprise in that division, I think, right now is actually the Atlanta Hawks. With a record of 7-5, I think Atlanta is doing a lot better than the addition of Paul Millsap replacing Josh Smith has been very steady. And I didn't watch a lot of Millsap in Utah. I know he's always put up good numbers, but he's not athletic as Josh Smith, but I think he takes a lot better shots and is a better team player than Josh Smith, and you're seeing it in success Atlanta's having right now. And also, no one's really talking about this, but Jeff Teague is playing incredibly good basketball. If you look at his stats, he's averaging almost 19 points a game and almost 9 assists a game. And I don't think anybody anticipated him to be so rock solid when he was originally drafted to the Hawks. And their roster isn't going to – there are no real names that are going to pop off the board as you as superstars. I mean, they have DeMar Carroll starting at small forward. I think Cartier Martin is his backup. Who are these guys? I'm sure they're not household names. I know people listening out there probably don't even know who they are. So in that regard, they're doing something right. Danny Ferry, people are kind of laughing at, the Hawks saying they didn't have the name, they're going to be terrible, they might not make the playoffs, but they look pretty consistent and pretty solid. I'll be keeping my eyes open on them as a team to watch, see if they'll be able to maintain this as the season progresses. But also another sleeper team that's doing very well this year is the Dallas Mavericks. Right now, you have Dallas sitting with a nice and healthy record of 8-4. And, they're 3 games behind the 10-1 San Antonio Spurs, who are actually the hottest team in the NBA with an 8-game winning streak right now. But I was really impressed about the way Dallas put together their team. Calderon's a very good point guard. If you have League Pass, come take a look at him. Very good shooter, smooth floor general, along with Monte Ellis, who's a high-volume scorer. I think that's a dynamic backcourt. They're undersized as a backcourt, but they're highly effective and intelligent players. And Monte Ellis is extremely aggressive, and he's actually leading the team in scoring right now with 23 points a game. So he's taking a lot of pressure off the dirt as well. And being able to bring Vince Carter and DeJuan Blair off the bench helps a lot too. So I think Dallas, a team that missed out the playoffs a little bit last year, may be one of those teams that sneak into the playoffs this year along with Minnesota. So it's going to be very, very tight in the Western Conference. With Kobe Bryant's been cleared for practice. I believe he had his second practice, so we should be seeing him grace our presence soon. And the Lakers have kind of held serve. They're 5-7 right now, but if they can get a Kobe Bryant playing again before the month of December starts, that should help out a lot. I think Paul Gasol's playing a lot better now that the distraction of Dwight Howard is gone. I think there'll be a more cohesive unit. The team should be running a lot faster. So their record should improve. I still see if the Lakers do get in the playoffs, it's going to be maybe like a 7th or 8th seed at best. But it's still, as long as they hold the fort and stay around 500 when Kobe comes back, and if he is the older player, so I wouldn't be surprised if he re-aggravates that torn Achilles tendon. I really wouldn't, especially if as the season progresses and they ramp up his minutes and he starts playing more aggressively with that hunger, to get into the playoffs. So I would keep an eye out for that as Kobe as well. Father Time's undefeated, and even as an older player, you can rehab. But, when your body's older and you put that stress on it, injuries do pop up. So I wouldn't be surprised. But, I like to see the healthy Lakers, and I think it's always good for basketball when the Lakers are playing well. So I'm wishing those guys the best. There's another team that is also doing some very good things and surprising things that no one's talking about. And actually, I'm kind of bad about this myself because I haven't looked at these guys as much. But the Portland Trailblazers, those guys, they're sitting pretty good in their particular conference right now as well. Like I said, I haven't watched a whole lot of Portland this year, and but I'm going to have to. I know they have LaMarcus Aldridge and Damian Lillard, who was the Rookie of the Year last year, surprisingly to a lot of folks. So, so in that regard, I'm just surprised, just the fact that, they missed out on the playoffs last year, but their roster's pretty much intact from what it was. But I think what it is you have a focused and healthy LaMarcus Aldridge right now. I mean, the guy's averaging almost 23 points a game and 9 rebounds. Dillard's pretty much giving you 20 points a game. He can almost 6 assists. He can do a little bit better in that regard because he does have some good weapons, especially with Wesley Matthews, with having a dominant post presence like LaMarcus Aldridge. If he decides to stay in the post, I'm going to have to watch more of him and see if that's what he's doing. I can see why his points per average are almost 16 a game. He should be getting a lot of good open looks. And I think the real sleeper helping part of this is having Mo Williams as a backup point guard to Damian Lillard. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mo Williams and Lillard are playing a little double point guard together playing together at the same time with Damian Lillard sliding over to the 2 spot and just becoming maybe more of a scorer. But their record's very good right now, but I'm going to have to watch more of them to make a better assessment of who they are, because I am kind of guilty of talking about a team I haven't watched much of this year. But nevertheless, I don't think any of us thought their record would be this strong. And also, I like to speak on another Eastern Conference team, the Washington Wizards. Yeah, their record is 4-7, but they did win their last 2 games after they had a player-only meeting. They beat Minnesota Timberwolves at home, which everybody knows is a very solid team, and they also beat the Cleveland Cavaliers on the road. And that's a very good sign for this team, because they were a terrible road team the last 2 years, and they only have 2 road wins on the season. So that's a good sign for them. But after the players-only meeting, you've seen a lot more ball sharing. Right now, John Wall is actually second in the league in assists. So he's really getting out there and running and hitting Bradley Beal for some open shots. Bradley Beal in his second year is averaging right now a healthy 21 points a game. John Wall is almost averaging 10 assists a game. The addition of Martin Gortat, very, very, very good acquisition, especially since Emeka Okafor might be out for the season. They didn't have to give up much for Gortat, but the guy's almost averaging 10 points a game. 10 and 10 as a center, that's not nothing to sneeze at. Nene's averaging like 16 points a game, but what you see is that they are sharing the ball a lot as a team, and they're kind of working the plays a little bit deeper. So they're on a modest 2-game winning streak. They have some favorable games coming up in their schedule, so they may be able to start resembling more of a team that people anticipate to be a playoff team. The downside, I think, with this team, though, is that, one, their draft picks, the number 3 draft pick, Otto Porter, hasn't touched the court at all this year. There's no sign of when he's going to be able to play basketball. I mean, the last time people saw him play was play a few bad games in Summer League, and he hasn't been in training camp or practicing with the team for a while. So I believe it was a hip flexor or sore hip injury that he's had, but there's not a lot of details of why he's out so long when he's scheduled to return. With Martell Webster and Trevor Ariza, it doesn't look like they'll be missing him that much, but nevertheless, he's out. And, I think depth is important. And the biggest problem or deterrent the Wizards may have from making the playoffs is actually the injury. Excuse me, not injury. Let me not curse this team, but the backup point guard, Eric Maynor. He hasn't been playing well at all this year, and he's a terrible change of pace from John Wall. His plus minus from last night was immense when the win they had against Cleveland last night. I mean, when he came in, the team chemistry went down immediately. The cohesion was bad. He doesn't look for a lot of open players. Takes a lot of selfish shots with that terrible floater he's been forcing going through the lane. And it's really not a good look for the team at this time. And the thing that would derail them all if John Wall had to miss any amount of time and you would have to insert Maynard or Derek Temple into full-time duties as a point guard would totally derail any success this team would want to have. So, I blame that on the general manager of the team, Ernie Grunfeld, because to me it's your responsibility to have a backup point guard who's serviceable and who can fill in for your point guard, or who can actually maybe give your point guard some rest because they're actually playing a real solid game. And there were plenty of available quality point guards this year. Free agency, I mean, Nate Robinson, Mo Williams, Darren Collison backing up Chris Paul out there with the Clippers. Even Bino Udrich, who's like a third. He may be starting for the Knicks. He's been all over the place with the Knicks, but Bino Udrich is a solid point guard, or even maybe just trying out in the draft, trying out a young point guard. The guy from Louisville who's getting a little bit of time with the Pistons right now, Siba. I mean, to me, there's a lot more quality point guards they could afford to reach out to than Eric Maynor, or they even could have kept A.J. Price, the backup point guard they had last year. they didn't. So, this is what they have right now. I would recommend maybe getting rid of somebody like Trevor Booker and seeing if a point guard is available, because I think it's a must, especially if you have playoff aspirations. I think you should take that seriously. But right now, Washington's looking okay. So we'll see where they are as the season progresses. It's still young and it's still pretty early. But to me, it's always important to have a real rock-solid roster, having people that are in place that know they can fill in, like Oklahoma City, for instance. Reggie Jackson did a very good job holding the fort till Russell Westbrook came back, even to the point now where you're seeing Reggie Jackson play some point and moving Russell Westbrook to the shooting guard in the fourth quarter of games. If you look at Oklahoma City, you'll see those guys playing together more because they built up that trust factor. And I think being flexible like that is very important in the NBA, because injuries do happen. It's a long season, second longest in baseball. So, but we could talk about a lot for things, but my man didn't come through today, so hopefully I held the fort well for you guys. We'll tune in tomorrow. We'll do our football picks and maybe touch on a little bit more basketball, but that's what we have for today. Again, this is BeatStreet Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host, Lee, a.k.a. the Hoops Guru. You can check us out on the blog. You can check us out on Twitter at BeatStreet Radio. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll look out for you next time. Everybody stay positive, healthy, and always show love. Peace.
You never too old to sell a key. So how could you be too old to MC? I'm from where it originated, so get me. Why would I stop what I created even at 60? Shout out to Herc and Cindy. Hip-hop lifts me and never left me. You know what KRS be. Right there where the best be. When I spit a free, I can't help it if that's how God bless me. So I'm never empty. Writer's block never tempts me. With 20 albums, I mastered this evidently. So I ask you gently. You don't see how to spot me over pop for my classic medley. I can't stop. The people won't let me. I don't talk sexy, but I do come correctly and you can check me. But just don't compare me to the next G. KRS-One. When you get older, you'll respect me. So if you think you're too old, you're thinking that you're too cold. You gave up on your two goals, the system. I'm giving you a new soul. You're never ever too old to manifest your two goals or the system. So if you think you're too old, you're thinking that you're too cold. You gave up on your two goals, the system. I'm giving you a new soul. You're never ever too old to manifest your two goals or the system. Yeah, I keep it moving all over the country, doing underground.